Welcome back. You're watching The Big Idea. Now, artificial intelligence has supercharged almost every aspect of business and society. South Africa, with its high unemployment rate, finds itself at a critical juncture. Today, we unpack how the nation can harness AI to drive widespread growth and prosperity, and that's by fostering local innovation, investing in AI education, and creating a conducive regulatory environment. Joining us with insights is Richard Shewry. I lead lab manager at Regent Business School, and Dr. Miriam Altman, a professor of 4IR practice at the University of Johannesburg. Good afternoon to you both, and thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. I'll start off maybe by asking a bit of a philosophical question, something I wonder all the time, and I keep saying that a lot like social media, it looks like AI might be something that the African continent just consumes, and that we're just not at the fore in terms of creating products. We're not at the fore in terms of chips. We really are nowhere. I'm keen to get your thoughts on this. It could be a bit of a doomsday way of thinking of it. So Richard, we'll start with you.
No problem. Yeah, you brought up a very, very good point. It's something that does concern me as well. We don't really have the compute power which allows us to obviously train massive large language models with our own kind of localized data and our own languages. So obviously that comes down to hardware, and like you pointed out, the chips. We don't have to feel all that bad because there are very few companies around the world that actually make the chips that do this, and NVIDIA is leading the way when it comes to AI chips. And obviously, they're kind of trying to make it as accessible to everyone as possible, but obviously these chips are really expensive. I saw a couple of days ago, Elon Musk just bought 100,000 of the H100 NVIDIA chips, and those things go for like close to R1 million each. Sure. So it's obviously not as accessible as it could be to be able to access some of this. But the good news is there's obviously other ways of doing it, and we can use kind of local machines with local GPUs to do smaller scale things. And that's what actually some of our students are working on. So we've got some interesting projects that they're working on. But yeah, you're 100% right. We are using it and we are consuming it, but we're not actually kind of putting back into it. And that is obviously a huge, huge kind of concern for me. And I think it should be for the country and the continent as a whole. If we had more compute power, we'd then obviously be able to offer our services much like Microsoft and Google are doing to the rest of the world. We'd be able to obviously offer that to the rest of the continent and hopefully keep our resources and money in South Africa or in Africa rather than sending it to the rest of the world to do all these heavy computing processes.
Miriam, keen to get your thoughts on this one, if you'd like to add onto anything Richard has said.
I think at this point, as Richard said, I don't think chips are the big issue, whether we can produce chips or, to be honest, even hardware. I think our biggest issue is getting the population online and getting an e-enabled population. If there's one thing that countries like from Vietnam to China to Rwanda have done is whatever the issue, even in low-income environments, is getting the population e-enabled, digitally aware, services that are ubiquitous. The critical thing is that information's going into the cloud, and it creates an even greater divide. We have a population, aside from struggling with general reading comprehension, which, to be honest, is a problem in this regard as well, right? It's really having government driving services, businesses getting people online, community services, reading capability, digital awareness, and I don't just mean Facebook and WhatsApp. That people really are, when you're in a place like Vietnam or China, it's in their blood. I got to tell you, it's quite something. And the services are low cost, the broadband's cheap, the handsets are cheap. And government really had this idea that everybody should be engaged. It's a game changer in terms of dealing with equity issues and growth and economic growth and inclusion. And conversely, we're going to see even more separation when people can't get into the cloud and all information is in the cloud. I don't think everybody's completely internalized what that means, which is that people then are completely cut off from political information, health information, news, business, job search, everything.
I'd like to stay with you here, Miriam, and we'll come back to you now, Richard, because, of course, you're working with some students, and I think it's very important to find out what you are seeing there. But, Miriam, you mentioned the issue of information in the cloud, and I'm maybe keen for you to break that down for us. What does that mean on a day-to-day? It's obviously not the same as picking up my iPhone, going into my Safari app, and typing out a question.
It's exactly that, actually. It often sounds technical when I refer to cloud, but actually that's what it is.
Okay.
It's that almost everything, like for example, I and most people hardly read newspapers anymore. All my news is sitting on my phone. I've got different apps from New York Times to Business Day to News 24. It's all in the cloud. All my files are in the cloud. All the information I get is in the cloud, right? So if you're not in the cloud, so the cloud just means it's in that ether, it's in those data centers, it's in the cloud. It's not on your handset. That is an incredible opportunity in a place like Africa. So I often engage with people who say, well, we're not ready for this. It's not really an African solution. It is a superb African solution. When you have long distances to get to work, to get information, as we do across Africa, not just in South Africa, populations that aren't that dense, low-income communities, it is absolutely a perfect set of solutions. When you have limited skills available, you can deploy in different ways where you can use your high skill capability in a better way and more centrally, and deploy lower or semi-skilled people to do certain kinds of work, and then use VR or visuals to guide people. It is just an absolutely perfect set of solutions. But we've got this headspace that says, well, we're Africa, we're not there. But actually, it's perfect for us, but we're not garnering it.
Listen, Richard, I'd like to bring you in here because, of course, Miriam makes mention of issues of inequality, bridging inequalities, and education is a fantastic equalizer in most places. You work with students, you work with young people. Of course, they're busy with projects there. I'm just wondering what you are receiving. And I mean that from some of what Miriam's mentioned here, literacy, capability. That's, of course, skilling young people. But I'm also then keen to get your thoughts on reskilling older people. And I think that also is much more of a challenge possibly than trying to skill the young and upcoming. Yeah.
100% right. It is a bit more of a challenge when the mindset is stuck in a certain way and doesn't want to embrace new tech. But we have that through every kind of new kind of technology, even from DJs using vinyl records to now USBs, and the diehard vinyl fans are going to be like, no, I want to bring my record case, but things have changed. But yeah, with regards to the access and the inequality that kind of or kind of bridging the gap and kind of making things more equal, I think this does give us the opportunity to kind of give more people access to these kind of technologies and tools and kind of frameworks and the power that this represents, using services exactly like Miriam pointed out through the cloud. When you say it's perfect, I'll kind of agree to disagree in a way, Miriam. I think there's obviously some of the challenges some of the concerns I have around the cloud specifically. For everyday applications, I think it's great. I think when it comes to data privacy, and especially when we start to implement kind of government data and kind of company data into someone else's cloud, into someone else's kind of infrastructure, we kind of then at their mercy. We've kind of put ourselves in this position through for years and years, from WhatsApp to Instagram to TikTok to LinkedIn. All of these services are none of our services. So they could be turned off with a short line of code if we obviously kind of happen to have a disagreement with that particular country or that particular company. So I think there's a lot of opportunities because, again, it's accessible to everyone these days through all these language models that are available on the internet and through these diffusion models that are available on the internet for generating images and videos and all the rest of that fun stuff. I think that the students that have been working with have been kind of using it quite wisely. They've been using it to create customized kind of solutions to South African challenges, using some of the open source tools that are out there, actually even running some of their models locally. So there's the data is safe, the information that kind of is being processed and the chat conversations that are being kind of created are all localized and saved locally in South Africa. So my concern around kind of companies is obviously a lot of people are using some of these services to kind of help them get through their daily work. And in turn, they're kind of putting a lot of public or a lot of private information into these kind of open or into these LLMs that are available like GPT and Gemini and kind of Meta AI, etc. That data is going to be used, obviously, to train the next models, which is obviously quite dangerous, I think, for companies. So that's why I'm quite a fan of trying to localize as much of it as possible. But as obviously we all know, the compute power and our challenges with electricity can kind of possibly get in the way. But what I have noticed with the students, especially the younger ones, they're ready to embrace it. We've had some great projects that have been coming through. go into detail if needs be, but students are already finding interesting ways to leverage this technology, and again, using a lot of open source tools that cost zero money to actually run, and to find like good solutions that are very, very specific to South Africa's challenges, not to the general challenges of the world. And I think we should focus on South Africa a little bit more these days, rather than getting too kind of concerned about what the rest of the world is doing. We've got a lot of our own challenges that we can use these tools to kind of help us solve.
Miriam, I'd like to bring you in here. Earlier today we had a conversation with an expert around issues of water, and they made mention of the fact that we're battling to find bankable water projects. Then, of course, we think of issues like electricity. It can feel like we have real issues, water issues, electricity issues, and we don't have time to start to think about what embracing AI might mean for us. So stuck in survivalist mode with countries that have balance sheets that are barely, making it. I'm keen just to get your thoughts about that mental barrier, about, we just don't have time for those kinds of things right now. We need water, we need food, that kind of thinking, which I think really dominates how we treat new technologies on the continent and here in South Africa.
So by the way, the main work that I'm doing right now is actually on water security in Gauteng and eThekwini, by the way. And just to say, and the bankability of projects is being addressed currently. There are projects, but money needs to be raised because the municipal budgets probably cover half of what needs to be done to fix the pipes and deal with the leaks and all of that kind of thing. But what I have to say is, Johannesburg has been telling me when they're replacing pipes now, they are actually putting sensors into the pipes, as they should be, so that they can then do remote diagnostics, just as an example. Yeah. So so the first thing to understand, so it's funny that you happen to choose that particular topic. Now, the thing to understand is that communication, water is essential to life. There's no doubt about it, more than electricity. Communication, however, is one of the most fundamental impulses of people, fundamental to the operation of markets. If you looked at a survey of what people care about the most, they'll put having a cell phone or having someone who can care for me way above almost anything else. They'll even say more important than food. I think they mean, I'll forego meat if I can have pub, but I have to have somebody who can take care of me, and I must have my cell phone. They'll put that at the top of the list. Communication is the foundation of, aside from water, is life. It's not a nice to have, but people see it as soft. But actually, it's one of the most foundational elements in making society work, life work, business work. We don't think of it that way, and we don't treat it that way, but it's absolutely foundational. Now, so that's the first thing. So it's not a nice to have. It's treated like it is one, but it's not. And then within a lot of these services, as I say, people treat it like it's a really highfalutin thing, and it really isn't. These things are very often even off-the-shelf kind of solutions. And we certainly have the technological know-how currently. And as I was saying, in a country that's struggling with, say, engineers in municipal areas, as an example, you could be having a smaller number of engineers in a headquarter deploying semi-skilled or lower skilled people. I was giving that example before with headsets and so on, who are getting help and guidance in how to fix stuff. You can think about how to balance out the skills better to get better service. The remote diagnostics within pipes is absolutely critical to being able to preempt leaks. So you get road breakages in the road or in pipes, etc., before they happen. The reason that becomes important is once a water pipe is broken, you're really stuffed, actually, because you can fix it, but you're going to find that there's going to be breaks down the pipe later. It's how water works. It's unlike electricity. You can shut the electricity off. It doesn't affect the entire system. When you shut the water off, or when you have a break in the pipe, it's very likely you're going to have a whole lot of other breaks. So you have to catch stuff early. We're not doing that. We could be bringing down the cost of that maintenance with these kinds of systems, and they are not beyond our reach technically. is the thing. Just to come back to the point of what Richard was saying, what I was trying to say is, it's not so much that we need to be producing the chips, but when he says we have to have control, I was actually going to raise it, so I'm very glad that he raised it. The cybersecurity issues are extremely important. I'm often speaking, when I'm speaking in this realm, about the lack of accountability. And we saw that just recently when Microsoft collapsed, Microsoft systems around the world. It's happened to Facebook, WhatsApp, et cetera, as well, and they've never said why, ever. It happened a few years ago that the entire world practically shut down because people think internet is WhatsApp, Facebook, et cetera, Instagram. And there was never an explanation, nor an explanation of redundancy. It means, so, redundant systems mean you have a redundant line. So if one line breaks, there's another one that can come on stream. Telecommunications works that way. There was never an explanation. When that one fails, what's the backup? That's what was just exposed now this week, when millions of people around the world weren't flying and whatever else. And I'm guessing that we're not going to get much of an explanation, and nor an explanation of how that risk is going to be shored up. That is an enormous danger. Plus, South Africa is a target for cybercrime. It's one of the it's like one of the top 6 targets globally. So there's no doubt that we have to have control of those major systems. But can you get people on board? Absolutely. A friend of mine was Minister of ICT in Rwanda. I forget what the real title was, but he was Minister of ICT. There, most people get messages on USSD. It means like they're on 2G still. They use those old Nokia handsets, but they got everybody online. The government pulled people online to to get government services, bookings with clinics, et cetera. It can be done. We just have to be creative with the resources we have, where the population is, but you've got to pull people on. When I first started emailing, which will show my age, so I am one of those older people, unfortunately. So when email first started, and I was feeling like I can't get my head around it, I started a new job, and my boss said, if you want to work here, you got to start using email. And you have to start using the system. If you tell the old grannies, gogos, you want to get your grant, you've got to get online. If you want to book at the clinic, we're going to be doing it by SMS now. Sure as hell, they're going to get online. You can have a lot of people holding their hand, but they're going to figure it out. They're going to get on, right? That's how you pull a population on. And it can be done. And there's plenty of examples. Well, countries poorer than us.
Richard and Miriam, we're actually out of time. I wish we had more time. I have like 8 questions left for you, and perhaps we can revisit this conversation in the future. I do think that we're just getting started, as a country, to really take stock of the potential here. Thank you both for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure getting your thoughts and insights. That was Dr. Miriam Altman, a professor of 4IR practice at the University of Johannesburg, and Richard Shewry, I Lead Lab Manager at Regent Business School.